Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author and robot, and today I'm going to talk to you about finding an agent. Now, I don't have any surefire ways to say this is exactly how you get an agent because it is such a different process for everybody, and there is no single way to get an agent. However, what I can tell you is where to start looking for an agent or different places to publish your work and how to prepare effectively for what's going to come when you start your querying journey. Okay, so don't expect in this any surefire things to say this is exactly how you get an agent because there is no such thing as a surefire way. There's one way to more or less get a done deal. But even then, I would put some caveats on that, and we'll get into that one. But before we get started, number one, if you are new to this channel, please remember to like, share, or subscribe if you like what I do. Here, help me grow. When we hit 1,000 subs here, I am going to do a walkthrough / introduction. When we hit 1,000 subscribers here, I'm going to do a tour of my bookshelf, which you can't see because it's off screen. But there's some interesting stuff over there. Just if you want to know what's over there, let's get to 1,000. Number two, if you would like your stuff featured, your writing featured on this channel, check out Lemoy. It is the monthly event on this channel where I read what you guys write. It's a blast every month. And number three, check out PitchFit if you would like your creative work pitched on this channel. Hopefully, writers, creators can find new readers, and new readers can find new content to enjoy. So having said all of that, let's go ahead and get into the topic. The first part of all of this is what exactly is an agent? So an agent in writing terms, because feds are agents too. An agent in writing terms is somebody that takes your book and basically sells it to some of their contacts. Ultimately, an agent is a business partner, and your book is a business prospect. Okay, now it's not fun to think about your creative work, your livelihood, your heart and soul as being a business investment, but technically it is. Agents are looking to make money, and so are publishers that are looking to purchase your book. So your writing project, your creative project is a business project. It's a business investment. The agent is the person that looks at your investment, evaluates whether they think they have the resources, like the people and the connections to effectively sell your book, and then two, if your book has what it takes, what they think it takes, in order to bring a return, and also if your work meets the criteria of their moral or ethical or reputational requirements. So that is what an agent is. That is the long and short of what an agent is. Because they're working with you on basically a business project, a business investment, because they're working with you on what is basically a business project or a business investment, you want to work with an agent who works with you as a person, because you're going to have to talk to them. You're going to have personalities that mesh. You're going to have to be able to understand each other and not be afraid to talk to one another because you're going to offend them or any of that business. The more successful agent-author relationships are those where the two trust each other and the two like each other and the two can communicate. It is so important that you get along with and trust and like your agent, because if you don't, well, what happens when you don't like any sort of partner that you're with? It generally fails. And it's okay if one of these relationships doesn't work out. And I don't mean like in an explosive way, but if you get an agent and maybe they have your manuscript for a couple of years and it doesn't seem like they're able to sell your manuscript because they either don't have the connections or they've lost interest or any of this business, it is all right to say, hey, it was good working with you, but I think I need to move on to find another person that may be able to service this project better. Remember, it is a business relationship. You've got to be cordial, you've got to be professional, and you have to remember that when they benefit, you benefit. Now, this is something to really know as specifically a newbie author or an author just getting started in your search for an agency. If the agent charges you money to take a look at your book, they are not a legitimate agent. No legitimate agent charges authors to read their book or to pitch their book. The agent gets paid when the author gets paid. The agent gets paid when a contract is signed and the book is going to publishing, all right? So if an agent says, hey, there's a reader's fee, then it is not typically a legitimate agent. The same can be said for small presses. Even small presses, independent presses, publishers, they do not charge the writer for publication. If you run into a publisher that is charging you upfront for books, for publishing, they are either a vanity press or they are some kind of hybrid press. And the hybrid presses are harder to tell from the vanity presses. You kind of have to get into the minute details of everything to discover if it's a vanity or a hybrid. But still, it's not the same as a small press or a traditional publisher, which will cover all of the costs up front, and you get paid when you either make the contract or when your books sell, depending on what your contract says. So keep those things in mind. There are all sorts of articles out there, including Writers Beware, which is a blog that lists different people to be skeptical of, or different companies to be skeptical of, as vanity. When you start looking for an agent, it's very important to understand that agents will evaluate your work based on objective qualities like visible editing, which includes copy editing, line editing, and developmental editing. It's not just if there are grammatical errors, is they want to see good lines, they want to see good development in the plot, so all of that is going to be looked at. Agents will also evaluate a manuscript subjectively, that is, do they like the style, do they like the story, do they like the themes, do they like the characters, and that like is all based on personal interest and personal preferences. In most cases, when you're looking at agents, they will have lists of the genres in which they accept. Those genres imply the publication or acquisition connections that agent has. So it's not just this agent prefers to read romance or sci-fi, it's that in the business, in the publishing industry, they have connections with acquisition people. Those are the ones that actually buy your books for the publishers. They know people that purchase sci-fi. If you go to somebody who does not have sci-fi listed in their genres, it typically means that they do not have personal connections with somebody who can buy a sci-fi book, and that is really what an agent does. So a good way to think of an agent is in the same way that you would think of a placement agency person. That placement agency person, or temp employee, I don't know how you refer to them, but the people that work at the temp agency, placing employees for the temp agency, they get paid when they place employees. Agents are basically the same. The temp agency workers also have connections. Their whole business plan is creating trusting relationships with different businesses in the area and learning what they need. So then when a business needs employees, they've got a relationship with this place that says, hey, we screen employees basically for you, and all you have to do is come to us and tell us what you're looking for, and we will do all of that work for you and send you somebody that fits the bill. That is very similar to what agents do with authors and genres, is it becomes a sort of quality check. Now, that's not to say if you can't land an agent or if you keep getting rejected, that your quality is absolute garbage. Again, stuff is evaluated on a subjective level as well as an objective level, and sometimes things are focused more on what the agents want to see published as opposed to what could sell or what could start a trend. A lot of the time, people rely on what they believe is a sure thing as opposed to taking a chance. So if somebody saw that vampires were trending, the agencies might be picking up all of the vampire books that they can while a new trend is hot, but they may be less likely to take risks on trying to create a new trend or picking something up that is so out of left field that could become a trendsetter. That's not to say that agents don't pick up stuff that is completely out of left field or brand new ideas or different ideas, but it is more likely that if they see a trend, they'll try to follow the trend or ride the trend as opposed to taking on a bunch of new and random and different ideas that are outside of what is currently selling. Also good to know in that when you're looking at agencies and publishing and books that are being released now, usually books that are released right now were acquisitioned 1, 2, 3 years ago. Because they take a while to go through the process of first you find an agent, and then the agent has to find a publisher, so an acquisition person. So then that's basically the agent querying businesses for your book instead of you querying businesses with your book. And then after they sell your book, finally, then it starts going through the process of editing. Meanwhile, your agent may also want to do edits on your book before they start pitching your book to publishers. So this whole thing can be very drawn out, and the books that you see hitting the shelves now, being sold now, were likely acquisitioned and sold a couple of years ago. This is why they say don't write for the trend that you currently see happening, because by the time your book hits the shelves, the trend is probably going to be over. There's a really long production stream going on here. So that is all of the basics about an agent, what is an agent, and what they do. Part 2, preparations for querying. You should have 4 things before you start querying. Number 1 is a query letter that includes an accurate plot summary complementing the style of the book and minimizing irrelevant information to understanding what the story is about and who the characters are. It should also include comp titles, especially contemporary comp titles. Agents that I've talked to and heard from have said they prefer contemporary comp titles because it shows that people are interested right now in what you're writing, as opposed to if you pick classics to say my book is like this classic. It's great if your book is like a classic, but that outsold a bunch of decades ago and it may not be relevant to the current market. It can also be BS, but that's kind of what they ask for. So books written in the last 5 to 10 years especially, they like as comp titles often. It should also include a target audience, like say what your genre is. Is this YA or is this adult? People who like this will probably like this. And logistical information such as how long is the book? Does it have series potential? Is it a standalone? All of that stuff needs to go in there. Remember, your query letter is basically a business proposition saying, hey, this is my business plan. This is my project. Would you believe in my project? And that's what it is. So that's what you're trying to give the agent. After you have your query letter, you also need a complete manuscript with the editing done. Again, you need the copy editing, the line editing, and the developmental editing. You need to have your manuscript as completely perfect and as completely finished as you can before you send it to agents, because the agents will be looking at that stuff. Now, agents can accept stuff and have accepted stuff that they've wanted to edit or do more edits on, or that have had grammatical issues in them because they're like, well, that's not that big of a deal. But you are representing yourself as a professional when you submit this stuff to agents. So you want to get it as close as you can, especially as a debut author, because you've got no reputation to stand on. And you typically can't resubmit your manuscript to the same agent if you've already submitted it there and they've said no. Even with heavy edits, typically agents don't accept resubmissions unless they've asked you to resubmit after you've made edits, or they find your book somewhere else, like during a pitch meeting, and they say, hey, could you send this to me? Like, those are really the exceptions. There may be more, but generally you want your book as perfect as possible, because if you query it and you send it in and then like 3 years later it's the same title, but you've massively changed the inside because you've noticed things are wrong and you've had critique groups, usually you can't resubmit it to the same agents. The other 2 things you will need are patience and thick skin, because querying is a long, tiring process, and it can hurt your soul if you're not prepared. Part 3. Where to look for agents. So I think this is the biggest part that kind of catches people off guard when they want to start looking for agents, is where do you even start looking for these people? How do you land a deal? I'm going to give you a couple places to start looking and some specific places, but otherwise you can just Google. Now, I mentioned something at the beginning of this video, and that is the more surefire way to get an agent. And the way to do that is to just have connections. Like, if you are a connected person, if you are from a typically higher class family and you've got connections in entertainment, you have an easier time getting into entertainment. That's just the way of the world. That means you don't have to query somebody and convince them to trust you. You pretty much already have family or business connections that will get those things for you. Now, that's not a surefire thing, but you do have a better chance of landing a deal if you're already kind of in the in-group. The other way is if you've also got a big audience. So people who have large audiences, say a YouTube channel with millions of subscribers, may have an easier time getting a book deal, because the publishers will look at those millions of subscribers as possible buyers of the content, assuming that they like who they're subscribed to. So, and that is the bottom line, is businesses are looking at, will this make me money or will this not make me money? Unless it's a passion project, which there are agents and publishers that pick up passion projects and push passion projects over what would make money. There's that as well. But still, generally, if you've got a lot of followers, you can usually use that as a a bargaining chip when you're querying agents or publishers to say, hey, look, these are my fans. A percentage of these would probably purchase my stuff. Now, getting past the connections and audience, because most of us don't have all of that stuff when we get started, there are a couple great websites and resources to get you on your way to meeting agents. Every year, the Writers Marketplace puts out a new guide for literary agents and for the writers market. They have listings of publishers and agents and what those agents are looking for and how to contact them and what their requirements are inside of these things. You can pick these up pretty much every year, and they update them every year, though I don't think you necessarily need to buy them every year. It just takes out old agents that may not be accepting anymore and inserts new ones. So just look at where you want to go from that. I think the Writers Marketplace also comes with a coupon for Writers Digest or something. The membership, I can't remember. Poets and Writers is a great resource. It has writing contests, literary magazines, small presses, agents, and you can get in here and go by your sort of a theme or genre, electronic submissions, and go through here and just see what their interests are and do that noise. Contests are also a great way to find a publication for your book. A lot of contests offer payment and publication or a representation for your book if you win that contest. Some of them also only offer exposure to literary agents through the contest, but still that gets your book in front of literary agents who may pick up your book and want to sell your book even if you don't win that contest. So writing contests can be a great way to find exposure or representation, but also know that writing contests typically cost money, so they can get really expensive really quickly. I know this especially because Bodymore has been placed in like a couple of different contests, and wow, just wow. Another website for finding submission places would be the Submission Grinder. If you just Google Submission Grinder, this will come right up, even though it's just called the Grinder. This is particularly good for short stories and novellas, even though I think they do look for novels as well. And they have poetry, yeah, any length. Look, it's not even showing my drop-down menu, but underneath length, they have flash, short story, novella, novelette, novel, story collection, and novel excerpt. And you can obviously pick by different sorts of genres and size and types, electronic or postal, payment, any of that. They also update their front page here, showing you rejections and acceptances from different magazines, who they were for, and the details of that. So you can follow what's being bought, what's being not bought, and target magazines or publishers that seem to be publishing what you are working on. Another place to look would be Submittable. A lot of small presses and contests will actually have you submit through Submittable, which is just basically a compilation, like a mini forum of submission things, and you can actually search up literary submissions on Submittable once you've logged in. It has you put in keywords, and you can look for novels or short stories or magazines or plays or whatever, and you'll see what they are on Submittable. It's free to use as a user. One thing to note is most of the things on Submittable do cost a reading fee, which I know I mentioned reading fees are a scam for agents. They are not a scam as much for indie publishing or for contests, because your payments usually fund either the contest winnings and or the publications that those small presses are doing. They operate a little bit differently than large presses. So there are many free opportunities in Submittable, but when you're submitting to small presses, literary magazines, or contests, be prepared for a reading fee. Sometimes it's $3, sometimes it's $30. Now, the Publishers Marketplace is not specifically for readers, but it is for publishers. So you can actually come here, and this is what a publisher told me at a conference, is you can actually come here and see, well, here are publishing jobs, number one, if you're looking for a job in publishing. But number two, you can see agents over here, this week's most visited pages. So these are the the agents that people are looking into, the writers and independents, and other random people that are being looked into. And you can also see right here new proposals and offerings. So you can actually see which books were recently sold, who they were sold by, and who they were sold to. That way you can kind of get a pulse on what people are buying and what agents are selling what. If you see something in this listing area that is similar to yours, that might be an agent worth looking into to see if they're accepting queries and to see if your book would fit with the type of books that they are selling. Now, I can't get into all of this website because I'm not logged in, and it does cost like a $45 fee. I can't remember if it's yearly or monthly, but there is a regular fee to log into this website to see all of the information that's not on the front page. But if you do, you have all of this insider information that shows you what is selling, who is selling, and much more than what is on the cover. Now, I've never used this page before, but Reedsy has its own literary agent seeking submission page where you can search, and it's got where they work, their location, their website, their preferences, all of this noise, and you can search all of this stuff here, looking for agents who accept your genre and are making deals. You can also use Manuscript Wishlist to seek out agents who are actively looking for content, specific content, and Twitter does the same thing where there's a manuscript wishlist hashtag. It's like MSWL, and more often than not, you'll see it as a way for agents to specifically almost commission writers to write certain things. Most of the time it's like, hey writers, I would really enjoy this kind of book. And so then you have the opportunity of trying to write that book if you didn't already have one existing, and often they are very specific. I saw one that was just like, dude, I am super into birds right now, and I'm into bird watching, and I would like a book that's about bird watching. So that can happen, but you'll see a very similar thing here with the Find Agents and Editors that was on Reedsy and that was on Poets and Writers, where you can put it in and search guide, search for keywords, search for genres, and then you just do your research on what that person accepts, who they work for, if you think that you would be a good personality fit, and add them to your list of potential agents to query. You've also got Query Tracker, which works much the same, except with this website, you can keep track of who you are querying on the website. From the inside, you can search up agents. People typically express what their experiences are with certain agents, like when they submitted their book, when they heard back from the agent, if they never heard back from the agent, if they struck a deal with the agent. You'll see a lot of that on this website. And then there are just, if you look up literary agents on Google, you'll get private blog after private blog listing different literary agents. I've found a couple that update like more than once a week with new agents entering the field or agents coming on after they've had their queries closed, or new publishers looking in new genres. And you can find a lot of resources just through a basic internet search of forums. Another great place to meet agents is at literary conferences, especially bigger literary conferences. Many of them, particularly like state literary conferences, will invite agents to come and speak on panels or workshops or give specific pitch meetings. I know that my local literary conference here, has a pitch session where you pay extra money to have like 5-10 minutes with an agent where you pitch your book. It's just you and them, and you pitch your book to them, and they may say, hey, I'm interested in that, or they may just say thank you. So actually talking and schmoozing and being around the places where agents are also gives you an opportunity to meet those agents. Do not follow them into the bathroom trying to, or wait for them outside of the bathroom trying to pitch your book. Another benefit that you get by going to conferences is that if they're day-long conferences, you may have the opportunity to have lunch with them, or they may sit down with you and you can just converse and build relationships. And also, so much networking in the writing and publishing industry happens at these conferences, at the bars, at the end of the day. So it really helps you out to go to these conferences, and especially to stay and do the bars, the bane of my existence, because mass socializing is not one of my strong suits, and especially not at bars because I don't drink and it's just weird. But there you have it. So much of this industry is networking after events, just having a good time, being people, drinking. So take that as you will. So all of these are really good resources to start your search for agents. As soon as you start looking at agents, you'll start seeing the same ones over and over and over again, because they all share basically the same pool. It's just updates are different, and like You might be exposed to different listings here and there, but generally you'll start seeing the same people all over the place, especially the higher profile agents. So I will list all of these websites down in the description below so you can save them or use them or check them out on your own. But those are all good places to look if you're ready to research an agent for your book. Now that you have found where to grab agents from or how to search up agents, it's time to get the querying process in place. So how does the querying process work? What are you looking at to do? And what can you expect? Number one, you need to expect to research agents. You have to see what they're looking for, what their personalities are like. It really helps to see what they've published to see if your stuff really works. Because even though somebody says they publish sci-fi, it may be a very different type of sci-fi or subgenre of sci-fi than what you actually write. So seeing what they publish can help show patterns or expose tropes that they really like that you could use in your query letter. Like, oh, I saw you agented this. I love that book and I love these things about that book. My book also has this thing. I think you might enjoy it. So you can use that sort of specialized research information to pitch your book to specific agents. When you submit your book, make sure you review their submission guidelines, whether it's for an agent or a small press or a magazine or a contest. Always make sure to follow the submission guidelines. These are not suggestions. Agents and publishers are sent so many manuscripts, so much that if you do not meet their requests, they're just going to delete it because you're not respecting their rules. So read the submission guidelines and follow the submission guidelines. When you're submitting to the agent, also submit only within the genres in which they've expressed interest unless otherwise stated, like you've met them at a conference and they said, hey, I'd love to take a look at that. Then typically, other than the format in which they say to submit on their website, doesn't really matter. Like the genres don't really matter. Or if it says they're not accepting queries, that doesn't really matter. If they've said to your face, hey, can you submit this to me? I'm interested. When you're sending your query email, use the agent's name, personalize it as much as you can. If you met them at a conference, tell them that you met them. If they've asked you to submit your query, tell them that. If you meet them on Twitter during like a pitch wars thing, tell them that. If you read a book that they agented, tell them that. Anything that you can use to like start making commonalities between you and that person, use that, but be brief and don't be a suck up. Everybody here in this situation is just a human trying to make a business deal. My recommendation when you start querying is to create a spreadsheet that you have like dates on, the names of the people, a link to the agency that they're from or one of their pages, the book that you've submitted, and how long the wait time was, and also a column for their response, even if you didn't get a response. Most agent pages will say that if you don't receive a response within 8 weeks to 12 weeks or whatever it is, that means that they are uninterested. If their page says something otherwise, then you may be able to expect otherwise. And if they ask for a full or partial manuscript, they should end up responding whether they are interested or not. But if you're doing a cold call query, most agents do not respond if they are uninterested, and you can usually mark it off on your list that, hey, they passed this up after a certain amount of time. There are also some agents and publishers that do not accept books or manuscripts as a simultaneous submission. That means that you can't submit it to them as well as 3 other people at the same time. It's going to be up to you whether you believe that you would like to wait to send to other publishers or agents, or if you're fine with sending it to this one person and waiting, 8 to 12 weeks before sending it on to others. There are different ways to approach sending out how many queries, who the queries should go to, the different batches that you should do them as. Some people send their first query to all of their top people. Some people send their first queries to a couple of like second choice people to test how their query works. Some people do a mixture of top choices and bottom choices, because the thing is, you want to see if your query letter is good, if your query letter gets a response, because you don't want to send your query letter to your top choices of agents if your query letter is poorly written and not going to get a response, because you really can't query them a second time for the same book. It is okay to ask your friends or your writing group or your crit partners to check out your query letter and critique your query letter, because that query letter is going to be the thing that convinces somebody to read your sample pages. And if your query letter doesn't look well put together, then your book is probably not going to be read. Now, these two things are completely different. They are completely different skills to very succinctly and interestingly summarize what your story is versus telling it in, 80,000 words or more. But the query letter is going to say something about how much time should be spent on reading your manuscript, and so you should try to get it as as succinct and hot as possible to reel in the max amount of interest. Most authors I know send out their queries to a handful of agents at a time, but when you do this, recommendation is to not, one, send them with a CC, like do not send mass email out to everybody all on the same train. Agents and publishers know that you are querying other people, but they still don't want to feel like you are just mass emailing people. So it is not a great decision to BCC or CC all of the other people that you're doing all on the same email. That's why it also helps if you say hello agent name instead of hello agent, because hello agent reads generic, it reads impersonal, it reads like it's probably a BCC generic letter. And yes, you might be copy pasting the same text in all of them and just changing the name. But at least pretend to try that you're not just mass cold calling, okay? That's the expectation. Now, part 5. After submitting, what's next? The most important thing that you can do for yourself after you submit the first batch of queries is to just keep working on your next project. Querying is a waiting game, and if you're not occupying yourself with something else, you're probably going to drive yourself crazy waiting to see if you get an answer, especially if you never end up getting that answer. Also, prepare yourself for template responses of querying and publication are subjective, and just because I'm not drawn to your project doesn't mean that everyone else will feel the same. You'll find this is in almost every rejection correspondence that you get for creative work, including contests. They all tell you this. The rejection letters are usually longer than the acceptance letters. But as I said before, rejection of your work does not mean that it is bad. It just may not be what the agent sees, where the agent sees the market going, where the agent wants the market to go, or they personally did not connect with the work the way that they want. And that is actually a really big thing. I've noticed it much more with putting my books out there, just how many specifically readers are like, I need to personally connect with this person in such a distinct emotional way. I never read books that way, but I'm seeing more and more as I get reviews on my books, so many people looking for that emotional personal connection that is so deep, and that's the thing that they need in order to really feel committed to a book. So while rejection can mean that your book is not ready and there might be structural problems, you can go and check that with your crit partners or your beta readers. There is also a level of this that is business, that is personal preference, that is where somebody wants the market to go, where the market is going, and all of that noise. So keep those into consideration and try to keep an objective mind yourself about why you were rejected and how to keep moving forward. That's, again, also why it's so important to continue working on another project, because maybe your first book that you start querying is not the first book that you should be publishing, and it is something that will get published in the future once you do a different, maybe more marketable idea. And that goes into my next point. The benefit of continuing to write while you query is soon enough you'll have another book to query agents, and you can query the same agents with a brand new idea, and hey, maybe that new idea will spark their interest more than the first book did, and once they get to know you, they will actually be interested in that first book, and then that book will be the next one to publish or one published in the future. Just because you've written it and you can't find a publisher for it now or an agent for it now doesn't mean that you won't find one in the future. Sometimes you just publish things out of the order in which you wrote them. Finally, the last thing is be patient with this process, with the querying process, with the publication process. The entire thing is a waiting game. Even as I prepare for Bleed More, Body More to come out in October, it's been a bunch of months waiting for time to pass, for it to start getting to where beta readers and ARC readers could have it. It's now been waiting for ARC readers to start leaving reviews, and Boom 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 is in the same place right now where it is sitting with beta readers, and I'm waiting to hear back on beta readers, and then it will be waiting for its cover designed, and it's waiting for its arc period and all of that stuff. So this whole thing is very much a waiting game. It takes forever to go from the querying process to the, oh, it's found a home process, to the publication process, and blah, blah, blah. It hurts. So keep yourself moving, entertained, patient, and focused on what comes next. That is my basic walkthrough on finding an agent, where to find an agent, and the querying process or the publication process. But again, there is no surefire way to land an agent other than, maybe having connections. I hope this video was helpful to somebody. Please, if you did find it helpful, leave a like, maybe share it so that other people can have help finding agents or information on querying agents if they need it. And let me know if there are any subjects that you would like me to do a video on that might be helpful for you in your journey of reading, writing, publishing. I'll do my best to give you the resources that I've had and collected over the years. With all that said, thank you so much for watching and have a great Monday. Please take care of yourself and don't die.
The only people who should come are those who want to meet their monsters.
If this is what Agatha wants, I don't know how we can even dispute it.
I change lives, baby.
And I end them. Sweetheart, no bargains hold. Only fools know restraint.
Only losers lose!
I've been under the knife so many times, I'm practically immune to it.
If your scissors are dull, may I recommend sharpening them with leather?
I think I hit you.
Mimal says I must have a guardian angel.
To enter the ring but abstain from playing is suicidal. Your virtue makes you nothing but a liability.
You're gonna die. You're gonna die. You're gonna die.